It will help, and I give credit to Sundar Pichai, the CEO, and Kent Walker for taking a concrete step. This is going to give land for more affordable housing development and an investment, but it's not going to solve the problem. I mean, it costs almost $50 an hour. You have to be making $50 an hour to afford a two-bedroom apartment in some parts of my district. So it's a step, but it's not going to fix the larger crisis.
You know, some might call me a skeptic, Congressman. When I first read this, I thought this is a company with $92 billion in cash on hand. It's pledging $1 billion over a decade. This seems like a pretty inexpensive way to get folks like you, people in Washington and regulators, off Google's back a little bit. Give them a little bit of breathing room while they're sort of under scrutiny at this point. Is that the case, you think?
Well, Google's approval rating is still over 70%, so I don't think they're doing this in a cynical way to curry political favor. I think they've heard from local mayors and local community leaders that they have to be part of the solution, and they don't want gridlock. They want to make sure that the teachers who are teaching the kids of their employees can afford to live in the community. What I will say, though, is the long-term solution has to be that Google and other tech companies have to hire outside the Bay Area. And that's why I've been pushing to get tech into rural America, into communities of color. Google, which has about 90,000 employees, if they keep hiring, it won't keep pace with the housing that's being built. We have to figure out how to distribute the gains of the digital economy.
Congressman, how many of the homeless population are teachers and how many are drug addicts?
Well, I think the homeless population is mixed. I mean, there are unfortunately a lot of...
Of course it's mixed, but my point is Google building affordable housing going to get to the root cause of something like the opioid crisis?
Well, the opioid crisis does affect my district, but it's not as severe as in other parts of the country. But I think that the bigger issue for the homelessness crisis is we need a comprehensive way to get them back into the workforce. And that's not just shelter. That's making sure that they have resume training. That making sure they have substance abuse training. Faith in Action was a nonprofit that worked very well, and we need to scale that. And you're right that there are two problems. One is the homelessness problem. But there's another problem, which is ordinary teachers and nurses and firefighters can't afford to live there. They have to live almost 2 hours away. And I think the Google grant goes towards both of those problems. But like I said, it's a first step, not a comprehensive solution.
Let me comment at Kelly's question in a different way. What percentage do you know, particularly in the Bay Area, of the homeless people are chronically homeless and may suffer from some debilitating condition that makes them come back to homelessness time and time again, as opposed to families that are homeless because they can't make enough money to live there?
Well, it's both. I don't want to give you a statistic because I don't have those statistics exactly on hand, but I will say anecdotally that you hear both. There are chronic homeless individuals, many of them veterans, or many of them who have some mental health issue.
So part of it's a mental health issue, not merely an affordability issue.
Yes, I mean,
I suspect a fair amount of it is, but I don't know.
A fair amount of it is mental health issues, substance abuse issues. But you do hear cases of a San Jose State professor sleeping in her car because she can't afford to live in the area, or someone who just loses their job as a chef or as a nurse or a teacher and doesn't have much family and becomes a homeless. So you do have that as well. I imagine the vast majority is still, though, people who suffer from mental health issues, which, of course, was President Reagan, who cut all of the mental health funding and cut a lot of those centers that created a lot of that crisis initially.
My briefing note says that the Bay Area is number 3 in terms of homelessness in the country, with about 28,000 homeless people. New York is number 1 with 76,000. But New York provides shelter, says this note, to 95% of its homeless population, and the Bay Area just 33%. If those numbers are accurate, why is the Bay Area falling behind on that measure? Why have they been less effective at housing the homeless than New York has?
Well, I'm not sure of those statistics, but if those statistics are true, that's appalling. I mean, we need to do far more in building a basic shelter for anyone who's homeless. My sense is that there hasn't been the priority on building the shelters and building the type of comprehensive services that are needed. And I have called for far more investment in that. A lot of local leaders have, and we have to do better.
Congressman, if I can pivot back to technology in general and Google specifically. You mentioned Google has a 70% approval rating. I'm not sure who's being
According
polled?
to the Morning Consult poll,
Okay.
an
All right.
Axios poll.
All right, so 70%. I'm wondering, what is your take on what Google or big tech's approval rating is in Washington in general? I mean, you speak to a lot of your colleagues, and it seems like they're being made the enemy of the people with, everyone from the DOJ to the FTC to various committees in Congress going after them.
Well, there's certainly heightened scrutiny, and I would say there are two concerns. One is a concern about privacy and antitrust, and Speaker Pelosi asked me to draft the Internet Bill of Rights. These companies need to do a better job to protect people's privacy, to require consent before getting data, to notify people before their data is being transferred, and they need to make sure that they're not privileging their own products, that they aren't buying up competition, and we need to be skeptical of mergers that would diminish competition. So that's one set of concerns in Washington. But the bigger issue, what you hear from colleagues is, how do I get some of these tech jobs in my district? How do I get technology opportunity in my community? Tell these companies to help work with community colleges to create jobs where I am. And I think one of the big divides in this country as we're going through a technology revolution, every American is a consumer of technology, but not every American has had a pathway to participate in the jobs of the future, and we have to solve that digital divide.